Now, a Jimmy Mathis exclusive, The Stone Zone, featuring Roger Stone, veteran of 30 years in politics and 9 presidential campaigns, including Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, and Donald Trump. Here is Jimmy Mathis on WBAL News Radio 1090 and the WBAL app.
Welcome back to the Jimmy Mathis Show. It is time for The Stone Zone, joined right now by former Donald Trump top advisor Roger Stone. Good morning, Mr. Stone. How you doing, sir?
Jimmy, great to be with you.
Good to be with you. Good to spend a little time with you in Cleveland. Just sort of break down your thoughts of how the convention went. It's being labeled as dark by the media and the Democrats. I thought about 95% of it was on point. Leaving there Friday, I thought the party was unified. A lot of great speeches. I thought Donald Trump did an awesome job on Thursday, and I just kind of want your take breaking down what I thought was a very successful week last week.
I totally agree. It's like they all got the same memo, the speech was dark. I think by the time I left the hall to the time I got to my hotel, 13 different reporters had used that exact phrase.
Yeah.
Look, we live in dark times. The country's facing enormous challenges. Hillary tells us everything is great. There is no VA problem. The Veterans Administration works just fine. The Islamic terrorism really not a problem. It's just workplace violence. It's a very naive view. So I think desperate times call for desperate measures, blunt talk, and that's Trump's specialty. The guy just, he's not always politically correct, to say the least. Doesn't always come out right, but I think the fundamental truths are all there.
Roger, it seems like it was a week that the media created a bunch of storylines that were really stories about nothing, whether it was the non-roll call vote on Monday, the plagiarism or lack thereof on Tuesday, and then Ted Cruz on Wednesday. The fact that Ted Cruz, look, I personally thought Ted Cruz had a great speech. Obviously, he didn't formally endorse Donald Trump at the end of it. How significant was that? You obviously deal with Trump on a pretty regular basis, former top advisor. Is there any real beef there between the two, other than just rhetorically what you see in the media? Was it really that big of a deal that he didn't formally endorse Donald Trump?
Well, I don't think it affected any voters. I actually think the only person affected was Ted Cruz. In other words, no one's going to vote for Donald Trump or not vote for Donald Trump based on what Ted Cruz says. But he had a golden opportunity. If he wanted to set himself up in the case that Trump loses, which I don't think he was, he should follow the lesson of Richard Nixon, who, realizing that Goldwater would lose, heartily endorses Goldwater, introduces him to the 64 convention, campaigns in 38 states for him, more states than Barry himself.
Right.
Compare that to Nelson Rockefeller, who takes a walk and never gets over it. It makes him a non-starter for the 68 nomination after Goldwater loses. Even after Ford appoints him vice president, he's still deeply unpopular with the conservative wing of the party, and Ford is forced to drop him from the 76 ticket. Ted Cruz has self-immolated. We're elephants. We have long memories, and nobody's going to forget this particular act of treachery. Jimmy, it's important to point out that every candidate who ran against Trump was invited to speak. Christie, Walker, Rubio all did. Rubio by tape. They all endorsed the ticket.
It's funny you bring up Goldwater because
I don't see why Cruz could not see the folly of his position. He was perfectly positioned to be the heir apparent in the event that Trump lost, and he blew it. Now he's Nelson Rockefeller. This guy will be a pariah to the Trump people, and the Trump people aren't going away, whether he wins or not.
Yeah, and Roger, it's funny that you bring up Goldwater because I've been drawing a lot. Forget the last 20 seconds of Ted Cruz's speech. I've brought up a lot of comparisons between Ronald Reagan's A Time for Choosing back in 1964 when he was stumping for Barry Goldwater and the speech that Cruz gave at the convention last Wednesday. And I thought, again, forget the last 20 seconds of it, I thought it was a great pitch for conservatism. I thought it was one of the better speeches of the entire week. And you're right. You go back to the early mid-'60s, that's where Reagan really made a name for himself and positioned himself on the national stage to eventually become president.
Well, it's true, but go back and look at Reagan's speech. He says 3 significant things. We are all one family, he says, talking about the Republican Party. He calls for Republican victory in the fall from the top to the bottom. And those are tacit endorsements of Gerald Ford, although he doesn't mention Ford by name. And so it was with Cruz. In other words, he told the Trump people that he wouldn't use the word endorse, but he would say he was voting for the ticket.
Right.
And, of course, he didn't do that.
How much was Newt Gingrich thrown off point? Newt followed Ted Cruz, and from where I was sitting, I could see the prompter in the back, and it seemed like Newt Gingrich was trying to do a lot of damage control on that speech. And and I'm a big Newt Gingrich fan, but his speech seemed to kind of land sort of flat. He was very much off script. Again, seeming like he was trying to do some damage control from the whole ruckus that happened with Ted Cruz.
Very definitely. The front end of his speech was quickly rewritten and loaded to the teleprompter. He took a solid shot at Ted Cruz.
Yeah.
Say what you want about Newt. He's been very helpful to Trump at kind of every step of the road here, all the crucial steps. And he recognizes that crossing the party, crossing a nominee, is serious business. Ted Cruz is carried away by his own ego. It was a good speech, but he's not Ronald Reagan. Reagan had warmth.
Right.
Reagan, had a genial nature. There's nothing genial about Ted Cruz. You know why people instantaneously dislike Ted Cruz? They're just saving time.
Right. No, I can see that. Again, coming back to Newt Gingrich, if Donald Trump were president, is there a place in Trump's cabinet for Newt, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I could see him as Secretary of Defense. I could see him in a policy position in the White House. Trump likes him. Trump respects him. Trump listens to him to the extent that he listens to anybody. So,
would there be
I think it's definitely doable. You want to talk?
Would there be a place for him as possibly chief of staff?
Yeah, that's possible, although that's a staff job. I mean, asking a former Speaker of the House to do a staff job, I think it may be below him in a certain sense. It's a functionary job. I think you see him in a policy job far more likely.
Okay. Fast forward, Democrats kick it off in Philadelphia tomorrow. Hillary Clinton yesterday picking Tim Kaine as her running mate, kind of an uneventful pick. Making the announcement in Florida, which I thought was odd. If you're looking at Virginia being a swing state, I don't know why you wouldn't make the announcement in Virginia. But just looking forward to Philadelphia next week. What are you expecting to come out of?
Well, and Tim Kaine, first of all, is going to be one of my nominees for the International Worst Dress List for 2016. I mean, the guy is rumpled, to say the least, and he could stand to lose 20 pounds. There is this immediate controversy about him taking all of these suits, which was evidently legal, but that doesn't make it respectable. I mean, it's still essentially graft. I mean, the difference between Ted Agnew and Tim Kaine is that under Maryland law, Agnew's bribes were illegal. Under Virginia law, the bribes to Kaine were legal.
Well, it seems like his ethics are pretty much in harmony with Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, no, he's a perfect fit for that ticket because, as you know, she and her husband would steal a hot stove.
Roger, before I let you go, it's a new campaign right now. We're entering into a general election, and the $60,000 question on Thursday was, what kind of Donald Trump are we going to see? Is he going to kind of revert back to the environment that he's comfortable with, going off the cuff when he's doing his stump speeches, or are we going to see a more refined Donald candidate?
And I'm going this way.
And I saw a Donald Trump that looked very presidential and was obviously, for the most part, staying on script. Is that kind of what we can expect moving forward, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, look, we're in a different phase, as you know, of the campaign, and I think that Donald recognizes that, and the bombastic brawler who won the nomination has to give way to a broader appeal, an attempt to attract new people that I think is essential to the campaign. But you're seeing this evolution.
Yeah.
Trump is never going to announce, okay, folks, I'm acting presidential. That's reading the stage cues like George Bush did, like message, I care. Remember that?
Right.
Bush going to New Hampshire, his aides tell him, Mr. President, the voters think that you may be too removed to not identify with the average person. You have to convince people that you care. He says in his very first speech, message, I care. I mean, it just shows you a classic tin ear. I think it's the same kind of thing here.
Roger, always appreciate your time. Got God, you've written more books than I can read. Give me some of the names of them.
Well, the most important book for every American to read is The Clinton's War on Women. You can go to Clinton's War, no apostrophe, clintonswar.com, or you can go to rogerstone.com, no D, rogerstone.com. This is the definitive expose of Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Clinton. Every American, particularly every woman, needs to read this book to understand the criminal past of the Clintons. The Clintons say, oh, this is all old news. Well, nothing's old news if nobody heard it the first time. And the Clintons were very adept in the 80s in terms of suppressing news. We only had 3 networks. We didn't have talk radio and shows like this one. And it was easier to suppress news at that time. Can't be done anymore. I think the American people are about to learn the full lowdown on Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea.
Roger, always a pleasure. It was good spending some time with you out in Cleveland. I'll talk to you next week.
It was great to see you in Cleveland. I've actually never seen anybody drink that much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure being on the radio for 10 years. Thanks for that. I appreciate it. Thanks. Roger Stone, former Donald Trump top advisor. 9:17, you're listening to the Jimmy Mathis Show. I'll be right back.